Thank you for joining us on the Winning at Selling podcast. I'm Bill Hellkamp of Reach Development Systems, and with me is Professor Scott Plum of the Minnesota Sales Institute.
As a consumer, we are battling the price increases on our essentials: food, gas, housing, some would say streaming entertainment. We explore options, but we don't find relief. Is it possible as salespeople we must impose a price increase on our customers? Are they exploring options? How do we know? How can we keep our customer after a price hike? Lower your expectations as Bill and I discuss selling a price increase on episode 525 of the Winning at Selling podcast.
Well, Scott, I'm anxious to see how you lower our expectations, but
Well, please everybody if you lower your expectations.
That's right. We are going to under-deliver today, so
Yes. So
you would
just slow down.
If you would lower your expectations, that'd be great.
Yeah, exactly.
But before Scott teaches us how to lower our expectations, we do have our book club, and that is How Clients Buy, and we're in part 2, chapters 5, 6, and 7. The book club is brought to you by A.J. Imholt, a financial advisor dedicated to salespeople.
As a salesperson, you have enough to deal with. Prospects hang up on you, clients skip meetings, slow responses to your emails. It's enough to drive you bonkers. Fortunately, you can take control of your financial future. Your time is at a premium, and you want to focus on finding new clients and growing the customers you already have. So it's best to work with someone who takes the time to build an understanding of what you have on your plate. I'm AJ Imholt of Fortune Financial, and this is where I come in. As a financial advisor dedicated to salespeople, my goal is to help manage your portfolio so you can focus on what matters. Then, I'll take care of the boring details while you go out and crush your numbers. You can schedule a time to chat with me using the bookings link in the show notes. Good luck out there, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you.
A.J. Imholt is a registered representative and investment advisor representative of Security Financial Services, Inc. Securities and investment advisory services offered through Security Financial Services, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. North Star Resource Group is independently owned and operated. Fortune Financial is affiliated with North Star Resource Group and is independently owned and operated.
All right, Scott, we're going to go into the last 3 obstacles that the authors talk about, why it's more difficult to sell or why people don't like to sell services, and especially those people who are presenting services don't want to be in sales. So obstacle number 2, but I don't want to sell, moving past Willy Loman. And in this chapter, they talk about this caricature of a salesperson, right? We've seen them, the checkered coat and the gold jewelry and the rings and hey, I can make you a deal. I can make you a deal. And I think, we've seen these people in movies, and it's become this kind of this caricature. What do you think about that?
I think of Herb Tarlick on WKRP for those you in a certain generation. Yeah,
that's
white
right.
Belt, white shoes,
yep.
Plaid jacket. I really think it boils down to, and this is a legitimate call reluctance that salespeople have. It's called role rejection, and all salespeople, they think, are peddlers, and since they're in the game of sales, all the people that expect them to have a dignified career or a dignified occupation, they must be thoroughly disappointed in these people because they picked a role of sales. And this is a learned behavior. They're taught that sales is a dishonorable career, and it's really not. It's probably one of the most honorable careers because you're influencing people in the choices and the behavior that they have to get a better life or better results. And that's a powerful position to be in.
Yeah, no, they talked in the book about 3 reasons that salespeople don't want to sell, because they feel it's wrong to do it, because they feel selling is ineffective. And I thought the most interesting was, it's kind of hard. It's difficult, so I don't want to do it. And I think from the accountants, the people who have the professions who don't know how to sell, and then their businesses fail.
Right.
I think they don't want to do the difficult work of selling, which is to make the phone calls and make the relationships and go out and network. They just want to put out their shingle and have everybody flock to them. And so I think it is difficult to sell. I don't think it's wrong. I don't think it's ineffective. it's ineffective if you don't know what you're doing. So
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be kind of interesting. I don't want to spend too much time on this chapter because the chapter 7 is a little bit more important, but he does talk about the birth of management consulting. We don't need to sell. Do good work and your reputation will grow your business.
Sure.
And I think that was true maybe when there were not that many people out there doing consulting, but there's a lot more now.
Yeah, the barrier of entry is very low and the access to information is very high.
Right.
And people are able to do searches pretty easily. And I think everybody legally can mention themselves on the internet. I talked a little bit about Bates versus the state of Arizona back in 1976 when attorneys were not able to advertise. It was verboten. You were violating the bar rules if you advertised. And the game has changed. Now, there's still some limitations on attorneys. And that's probably good for all of them because it keeps them all kind of on the same level playing field. But they do advertise, and they advertise more consumer law than they do business law.
Well, we're morphing into chapter 6 and obstacle number 3. Things aren't what they once were. It's harder than ever to sell services. And that you're right. When lawyers could start advertising, but the reality of it is we can't overcharge as much as we used to overcharge because there's more competition now.
Right,
and people are willing to get into. There's so many lawyers out there now. They're willing to do it for a little bit cheaper than, the stiff neck suits down in downtown Minneapolis and the big law firms.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't want the competition. So I did find it interesting that what they called how did you get business on the links and over drinks?
Yeah. Great line.
On the links and over drinks, and a closed system kept prices high.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as you said, the barrier has gone down. The barrier for entry has gone down, and we don't need to work in just the geographical location anymore because we can specify into a smaller niche, but then hit a broader marketplace online and through the new tools that we have. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, it's and then another one that they talked about is the world is flat. I think that was number 2. And that talked about the globalization of expertise comes with a challenge. The larger and noisier the market, the harder it is to find a buyer and seller to find each other on a specific task or a specific topic or industry. And this is really promoting niche sales or niche marketing where you're really focused on a specific industry or market and you target that and you're known for that and you're referred from competing companies refer their prospects to you because you do a better job at it and more efficient too.
Yeah, I think, and that's what Beckwith talked about in Selling the Invisible, which you and I have both read. Mm-hmm. And that is, don't try to be everything to everyone in this marketplace. You need to have some specialization so that you can get focused because, as we've talked about before, if everyone's your customer, that's almost a problem.
It is
because it's too broad. And so the note I put down, if you own a briefcase, you can be a consultant.
Yeah, exactly.
Now you don't need to own a briefcase. You just need to put up a website. So
yeah. I heard one line talk about a consultant is a person who takes the prospect's watch, puts it on their wrist, and then tells them what time it is.
Well, unfortunately, sometimes we've talked to prospects who haven't looked at their watch in years.
Yeah, that's true too.
They don't even know where their watch is. So, and interesting. All right. Yep. Let's spend some time on chapter 7 because he talks about the sales funnel and what's wrong with sales. Chapter 7, obstacle 4, a blizzard of bad advice. Everything you know about sales is wrong. And for those salespeople out there, you should read this chapter. I found it interesting. Some of it true, and some of it I thought revealed that he doesn't like salespeople very much.
Right. Yeah.
So what he talked about is what most people know about selling. We talked about this earlier. Comes from the movies: Glengarry Glen Ross, Tin Men.
Boiler Room.
You mentioned WKRP in Cincinnati, and so what it takes to be a salesperson is dishonesty, schmoozing, cutting corners, and cheating the customer. And I think that's certainly wrong for those of us who have been in professional sales and have guided people to make quality decisions in the past. That's what we have to do. So, but he did talk about the sales funnel being a numbers game. And I like the term he used is you need to increase the yield at each step in the process. So as we move from calling, prospecting to the appointment to getting proposals to getting the proposal closed. And this is true. What we do in normal sales training is we try to increase the yield at each of those steps and therefore increase the business. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I don't think there's anything, he's going to try and make a case that that's not valid. I'm curious about your opinion. I think it is important to increase the yield, especially if you have a smaller client base. Mm-hmm. And he acted like, well, we don't need to increase the yield because we only have 50 or 100 or 1,000 potential clients if we focus ourselves down. Well, I think it's more important to increase the yield if you have to do that, but you have to look at those clients in a different way. Go ahead.
I agree with that. And I just, when I hear increase the yield in each step, it sounds like there's entries coming in midway through the sales funnel. And I don't think that that's what the author means. I think you need to be able to increase your closing percentages or qualifying percentages with each of the next steps. And I think the more qualified the lead is going in, the more qualified, more yield you're going to get with each step within this particular sales process.
Yeah. Well, he does talk about, that in selling professional services, people do come in at all different levels within well, they do in regular sales too.
And we got to be cautious of that, because if we skip a step, it's going to become an objection. It's going to become a delay. It's going to affect future numbers down the pipeline. You agree with that part?
Well, I think so. And I think what he's assuming is, well, we develop these great relationships and we don't even need to present ourselves as a value leader or as we don't have to present our value proposition. We just, it's links and drinks.
Right.
It just happens over LinkedIn and drinks.
Yeah, this is a slam dunk. They bought from us before, so they'll buy from us again.
Or you advised me, to do it, and you saw my LinkedIn profile, and that was good enough. Now I'm going to recommend you. I think that's pretty. That's a pretty big leap to take, and I'm anxious to see how he presents it. But let's talk what he talks about in these the funnel assumes. Okay, so he's saying the funnel model doesn't work for professional services. Here's his reasoning. Okay, he's got 6 different reasons. The funnel assumes an infinite number of leads. When you teach sales funnel, Scott, do you assume there's an infinite number of leads?
I do not. I focus on a specific universe with, here are the qualified opportunities within this universe, and then target it. That's
right. And once I've called them doesn't mean they're gone forever. That's what he's trying to assume too. Oh, well, you called it. They weren't interested today. They're gone. Now that lead is gone forever. And I think he also assumes an infinite number of rejections. So I think he's wrong in that infinite number of leads. I want my clients to boil it down to less than an infinite number of leads and then start working those leads. Okay, number 2, the funnel assumes leads are a short duration, meaning they go through the process once and they're either interested now or they're not. Is that how you teach that?
No, I say that, there's constantly opportunities within your universe that are being, discovered or uncovered every single day, because companies progress.
They change. That's right.
And they become qualified to do business with you
when they weren't last year.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And that's what the trickle marketing has allowed us to do. You should be taking those leads that said no and putting them into but had a need as you saw it, put them into your marketing system so they're getting some kind of message from you on a regular basis, and then you've got them in your tickler file to call them in a year.
How many times have we done a program and then 5 years later somebody calls us because they were in the free program that they attended and they want to hire us?
That's right.
Well, it's because there's an opportunity that came up.
That's right. And we kept our name in front of them so that they knew we were still around. All right. Number 3, the funnel assumes it should be measurable. And what he's talking about there is you have a qualified number of leads, therefore that turns into a number of appointments, a number of proposals, a number of closed deals. And he's saying that in their marketing process, it's not really measurable because it's trust and building relationships. I think trust and building a relationship is part of every sales process.
Right. It's the familiarity.
Yeah.
I mean, and people talk about brand. Okay, brand, yeah, that's important, but it's familiarity. And once somebody is introduced and aware of a particular company or a particular service or a particular person, they're watching those entities to see if they're credible. And to be able to establish that credibility increases the value that they offer when they do have an opportunity to work together.
That's right. That's right. And it may not always be 100% measurable that I'm working that lead, but it's in my database that lead is being worked and that relationship is being developed. I was just at a networking opportunity last Thursday, met a couple of people I'm going to have coffee with. I don't know where that's going to be, but it's relationship based. Maybe they can push some leads my way. Maybe I can push some leads their way. It's the same thing he's talking about in this chapter. All right, let's go on to
you and I were at the same event, but we didn't talk to each other.
Well, I don't talk to you at events because I talk to you every week.
That's right. So keep that in mind if you're networking people.
Yeah, I didn't talk to the 4 people I knew there. I didn't spend more than a couple of minutes with because I wasn't there to re-see the people I already knew. I was there to meet people that I hadn't met before. So, okay, number 4, the funnel doesn't account for referrals. What?
Yeah. Amazing.
Referrals are a major part. If you're not counting on referrals in your funnel, you're in trouble. Yeah. And as a matter of fact, we're going to talk about statistics. And one of the statistics we're going to talk about next week, Scott, is most salespeople don't ask for referrals. Mm-hmm. So maybe that's why it's not in your database, folks. But if you're not asking for referrals, you're making a big mistake.
Yep.
All right, number 5, the funnel assumes a linear buying journey, meaning it goes from step to step.
It may, but sometimes the duration between those steps may be longer
or shorter.
Yep. And in some cases, the prospect may cover the step before you want to cover the step, which is great as long as we cover the step.
That's right. I've had some pieces of business this year where I got recommended. We made a phone call, had a conversation. I did a kind of a ballpark proposal, and they said, "Let's move forward."
Yeah,
perfect. And that's great. So that's those were off of referrals, and it was a nonlinear buying journey. So I think I'm okay with selling that way. And then the last one. The funnel perpetuates the myth of the super salesperson. So what he assumes in this is he uses the magic approach that you're some sort of super magical salesperson, Svengali, that can make people buy even when they don't want to. And I don't think that's true. This funnel just gives us a path of decision making that helps people move down. And that decision making, as you're saying in the steps, has to be done whether they skip steps or not. We may have to go back and do those steps.
Yeah, people buy from people that they have a connection with.
Right.
And there's a connection, there's a bond, there's trust, there's respect, and they feel comfortable making a decision on working with that particular person.
That's right. So I'm interested to see where he goes with this. I think some of his assumptions are a little wrong. I think I got a feeling, and maybe you didn't, that he doesn't really like salespeople either if they don't sell the way that he wants to sell. But I agree with you 100%. The steps have to be covered, whether you like to cover them or not. Otherwise, they're going to become objections in the long run. So let's see where this all goes. I'm always skeptical of a new way to sell because it can cause challenges if we miss something.
Yeah, and I think he may be setting us up. So he may be connecting with some of the problems. He may be, connecting with the reputation that salespeople have. And then later on, he's going to propose a solution that sticks to this particular problem or this perception that people have of salespeople. One thing that I really took away from this chapter, and I think that it is probably the underlying theme of the book, and that is the biggest challenge in our path of becoming a rainmaker, maybe actually unlearning what we think we already know. And this is really important when we deal with change or growth, is sometimes we need to unlearn what we've learned, because the market changes, how people buy changes, and that's what this whole book is about, is how people buy. So as I go through this sales process that this author proposes, it's different than sales processes that I've been taught and share with salespeople from other organizations and from my own perspective, from
Right.
my experience. So we may need to really look at it and unlearn some of the things, the way we think of what we already know.
Perfect. Well, we'll get into that next week.
So our topic today is selling a price increase, and it
That's
seems like, Bill,
common.
I've noticed this recently. If I go back and look at the news from 6 months ago or 9 months ago, it seemed like we were talking about supply chain issues, and all of a sudden we've changed from supply chain issues now to a recession. And I guess that's the best way to deal with supply chain issues is to say, hey, let's propose a recession. That
Well,
way
I
everything
don't know.
slows down.
Well, I don't know if it's proposing a recession, but I do think the reality of supply and demand says if there's less supply, the prices have to go up. The prices come up from the provider, and then they trickle down to many of us who have to go out and talk to customers. All of my prices have been increased. My electricity has gone up, my car gas has gone up, my travel has gone up. All the things that cost me money to be in business have gone up, even if I'm not selling hard goods.
Right.
But if I'm selling lumber or something that's made from lumber, those went up drastically in the last year. I think they're coming back down to earth a little bit, but I don't think we're proposing a recession as we're hitting the reality of the supply and demand marketplace. There's less supply out there, and then there's increased demand, and it's a tidal wave washing over all of us in sales.
Another ingredient of a recession, though, is government putting money into the marketplace and increasing government spending and increasing bills. And all of a sudden, there's more money in the marketplace. So that has an impact on a recession, too.
No, that causes inflation, and the inflation then causes the recession. But
right, yeah,
I'm not disagreeing with you on that, but I don't want to get into, what idiots most people in politics are.
Okay,
that's a whole nother topic.
Save it for group, Bill. Save it for group. So we're talking about a price increase. We'll get back to that. So
you're the one that introduced the topic.
I know. Just want to get you kind of emotionally charged on lowering everybody's expectations. We'll get people back on increasing the expectations. So back on the selling the price increase is we need to really understand, why did they buy in the first place? What caused them to purchase from us? Because that's what they find most valuable. And that's going to be the first part of the criteria when they make a decision, is why are they buying from us? I think about some products that I've seen or even purchased in the past. Nextel was a cellular company back 20 years ago, 25 years ago, and their position was free incoming calls. So you could advertise your phone number and you could have all kinds of free incoming calls coming in. And that's how they position themselves. Well, eventually they merged with Sprint and now they're not even around anymore. But people that bought from free incoming calls are going to switch when they no longer get free incoming calls. Now, the pricing of cellular, et cetera, has changed and evolved, just like paying for long distance. I mean, we don't pay for long distance anymore because that was a decision that was made, many, many moons ago. So first of all, think about how they bought, and then focus on that value. And we need to maybe reposition some of the services that we offer, but still deliver the same outcome and possibly the same outcome at a lower price. However, we're repositioning it so that we're covering our cost increase, operating more efficiently with how we operate an entity or a product, and we reposition it for a lower price. And I'll give an example. I worked for a publishing company. We did a monthly magazine. Our paper costs went up. Our mail costs went up significantly to the point where the format that we printed in was no longer efficient. It became cost obsolete. We couldn't offer it anymore. So we had to reposition the publication and print in a different format, maintain all of our advertisers. Now the ads were smaller, but they were also lower price. Our cost was lower, but we still delivered the same impact, which was communicating a message to their customers, building either a call to action or a brand awareness. So we still delivered the outcome, just in a different way.
Right.
And sometimes we need to think about justifying a price increase is to really show the customer all of the different costs that are included in a package. And in negotiation, this is called, show them how the sausage is made.
Mm-hmm.
So once you start showing them the ingredients of how the package is created, you can then itemize it. Here's an airline that does this, Frontier Airline. I can go from Minneapolis to Denver, and I'll go, oh, Delta's this price. Oh, Frontier is this price. Oh, Frontier is a lot cheaper. Let me go to Frontier. Click. Okay, now what do I have to pay for? A carry-on bag, a checked bag, a seat. All of a sudden, I add in all the things that are included with the Delta price. All of a sudden, the Frontier price is higher.
Mm-hmm.
So people then can decide what they want to purchase and what they don't want to purchase, and then they can end up paying what they want to pay for and what they don't want to pay for. Unfortunately, some prospects have a Kool-Aid budget and champagne expectations. And this is where there's a disappointment in the two of them. And we hear about people complaining on airlines. Well, they're budget discount airlines, and you're complaining about that. I mean, you get what you pay for at the same time too.
Right. Well, I think that's one of the major pieces that I think in selling a price increase. You really have to know not only your own value proposition, but what part of the value proposition is this particular customer most enamored with? What is it about us that caused them to buy in the first place? And we need to make sure that we reinforce for them that this price increase is happening so we can keep that type of value available to you. All of our prices have increased, and therefore we want to continue to do business with you. We want to give you the same kind of value that's important to you. And so let's take a look at this. And is there, the other part is, are there some things we're doing that you don't value that maybe we can take out of what you're doing? Or is there a different way we can package it that maybe is cheaper for us to package and deliver it, and therefore you're going to get what you got before, but as you were talked about in the magazine or in the newsletter, the packaging and delivery is a little bit different. Mm-hmm. So you've got to look for a tactic or something to latch onto to help you sell this idea to the customer, rather than just dropping it in their lap and saying, well, we're going to have to increase prices 10%. And then don't do the 10% across the board. I think that's always a mistake too. Can you wrap in some bulk purchase discounting that can help them? So look at the way they're doing business. Don't go in unarmed, is what I'm saying, into these appointments. You have to know what the value the customer is looking for and go in with some other options so that they have some different ways of looking at the way they're doing business with you and can make a choice and feel they have some control over what's going on in this conversation.
Mm-hmm. I think a couple of things that I'll add as we wrap it up is, we need to create value and then claim value. So like Bill said, find out what they want to purchase and what they don't want to purchase. So we're creating value in the options, and then claim the value that you create within the options so that people are able to run more efficiently when it comes to purchasing and only buying what they want. I think, some other things to look at is the cost of acquisition. What are some of your costs as a business? And if the cost of acquisition is high, and sometimes the cost of acquisition over the, companies don't make a profit for 12 months to 18 months in some cases, look at how you might be able to partner with other non-competing companies and create more customers and lower the cost of acquisition, and then deliver more value. And when you deliver more value, then people feel more comfortable increasing the price that they pay for that. I worked with one company where customers would sign sort of a purchase commitment and be a priority when they needed service. So they pledged that they would call this company first. And it was in the restoration business when storm, water, fire, smoke, everything. And they sold it to insurance agents. Well, insurance agents would then recommend their policyholders call this particular company. And then when a storm came through town, everybody was busy. But the customers that were with this insurance agent got a priority, and they got better service quicker with less damage. And that was making a commitment to the salesperson in the company through the prospect or the person that was referring them.
Right. Yeah, I've got a couple of tips as we wrap up here too. Some of the things that I've seen people do is a delay. So instead of dealing with the price concern, they don't like to have the conversation. So they delay, and then the price concern happens before they can have the conversation, and the customers call them. And that's a real bad way of doing business. Be careful of that. Another thing they do is they want to do it in a text or a letter or an email. Not a good way to do it. It's too cold. You've got to either do it in person or get on the phone. Don't try and pawn this off on a letter or a form letter, even worse.
Right.
The other thing I see them doing, Scott, is they go in apologizing. We're so sorry, and we didn't want to do this, and we tried as hard as we could to not have a price increase, and it's everyone else's fault but man, you got to go in with conviction. This is what's happening in the marketplace. I believe in our product. I know you believe in our product. Here's what the new cost is going to be. This is what we have to do. Let's see if we can figure out a way to mitigate this or deal with it. So be careful about that. And then make sure you have backup. Have your manager, your sales manager, be willing to come in, or have the head of purchasing or something come in and say, okay, yeah, we wanted to talk to you a little bit about this, and here's some issues that have caused this to happen. So have maybe the bigger guns ready to do that, especially with your bigger clients. And then I make sure when you're delivering that message, as we talked about, you're talking about the value proposition, you're focusing in on how we've been good partners together, and now we need to work together to work this idea out. And then, as I said, don't pass the buck. Don't blame it on someone else and look stupid doing that. So just be careful how you're crafting that message, because I think you can go in and lose a lot of credibility if you are apologizing or whining, getting too much on their side of the table.
Yeah. A lot of this is based on different companies, different industries, different products, different services. So Bill and I by no means have the answers for everybody, but here's what I'd like our listeners to really consider is, based on what you heard from Bill and I, what did you think of? And use that philosophy in all of the future episodes. Is based on what we said, what did you think of? What did it trigger? What did it cause you to reflect on and contemplate on, and then implement? And that's the value that I think you're going to get out of all of our podcasts, is when we said something, what did you think of? And then apply that, contemplate on that, dwell on that. And that's where the growth and learning occurs, because you have the experience. Our salespeople, our listeners have the experience, and you're making all of your decisions based on your past experiences. Bill and I are delivering some content, something outside of the industry, outside of the perspective of what you're dealing with, and then consider applying that. So thanks for that public service announcement on how to use our podcast.
Well, that's why I close with get better one skill at a time. Think of one thing you can do as a result of this and go out and try it. So let's close up with our golden nugget. This is from Walt Disney. The way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing.
Oh, what a great line. I mean, and sometimes our actions, as we know, speak louder than our words. And it's just important to be able to build that reputation through actions and not necessarily words.
Well, I think too, we spend too much time dwelling on things. I remember I had a couple of people that I worked with. We were trying to do a project together or in unison, and they kept working on their website. And I said, why don't you go out and talk to a couple of customers about, I got to get my website finished, and I got to get my brochures finished, and I got to get and by the time they're all done, I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I got to go out and go sell something.
Right. Yeah.
So quit talking. As a friend of mine says, you got the jaw jacking done. Now start getting something done.
That's good.
All right, let's close it up.
Everything we talked about will be at winningatselling.com. This is episode 525.
Next week, the book club, How Clients Buy, part 3. We're moving on. Chapters 8 and 9, and the topic, 10 astounding selling statistics. As we've been talking about, Scott and I have a goal to increase our downloads to 12,000 per month by the end of September. We're always a little bit slower in the summer, so we want to come roaring back in September when people are ready to get back to work. So please subscribe, share the podcast with your colleagues, and on your social media. Go out and get better one skill at a time.
Joyful selling.